Now, assuming the church wants to, control the population, what if the priest sabotaged Crollo's tape because he saw how well it united Meteor City's youth? We're live. Welcome back to the Hunter x Hunter podcast, or the Hunter Hunter podcast, depending on what fan are you. Do you say Hunter x Hunter or Hunter Hunter? Leave it in the comments. Anyway, today we're covering 3 chapters because we've just been busy little boys. And also we figured we would wait until we had a decent chunk of interesting stuff to talk about in the manga, which we do now. Where do you want to start, Pika? I guess we're just 349, right?
349? You mean 394, my friend?
Oh, yeah.
Bro,
numbers,
flip the numbers.
Words.
But yes, so obviously 394, well, now has been dwarfed by the massive chapters of 395 and 396. But we need to go in numerical order.
Tell me about it.
394 is a very dialogue-heavy chapter. It introduces several new characters. Such as a group of 5 people and their sergeant, who are private military contractors, and we're introduced to new members of Marina's gang, such as Carabellum, Chiffon, Souffle, and of course the most infamous of them, Dogman, who's
Dogman,
who's shaping up to be the big baddie of Marina's crew, except for Marina herself. He's an enhancer who's already level 36, and he's a pro wrestler. And he looks pretty intimidating.
Listen.
He's a chunky boy.
Here's a red herring. My money's on that one girl that looks like she controls Silent Majority, who Henry was chasing in 391. Or 390, I forget which chapter. But yeah, we get introduced to a bunch of these characters. I think we're going to keep 394 fairly concise. There's just so much text. We're going to simplify it down to the most important things that were shown. There's plenty of reviewers on YouTube talking about the details of this chapter anyway. I think it was just setting up a lot of different elements, moving the chess pieces into their places before they all converge type chapter. I think the most interesting thing about this chapter was the introduction of Serednich's friend group, which, surprise, surprise, he has friends?
That's
what?
crazy. I honestly thought...
insane, bro.
I thought that he would be too arrogant and he would see himself as so morally above everybody else that he wouldn't be able to make friends. I mean, he clearly pushes himself to be the best of the best in every field that he pursues.
Yeah.
So him being able to make not just one, but several human connections where he doesn't flat out murder them, torture them, play with them like he is with Theta. I mean, it really brings on a more humanist aspect to him, in which he's definitely shaping up to be one of the biggest villains of this arc.
Yeah. Togashi just loves to not have two-dimensional characters in his story. He just has to have so many different sides to them. Of course. It's just it was so perplexing to me that he would start to introduce this angle to Serednik. I was reading through and I was like, really? He's going this direction. Okay, I'm here for it. But damn. Just as somebody who likes to think about storytelling and how I would tell my own stories, I would never think to go in this direction with Terry, as they call him. Or I think it was different in the Viz translation. I think they say Seri or something, but
right.
They fascinating.
Say they have the TSERR.
Yeah,
part.
yeah, they do.
But yeah.
So we ummed at the same time. Buddies. But yeah, did you want to add anything?
I do want to say that let me just pull up the points. this is also where more of the Kakin royal army and military is now being exposed to Nen. This new character seems like she has a much clearer idea of what Nen is, because it has been revealed that she was in room 1004, which is Cyrenic's room on tier 1. And so she has been seeing firsthand his development with Nen and his growing relationship with Theta. And so now the news of Nen is reaching the more ignorant military officers on the lower decks. And so it's this new group of people that we just came across. I don't know if we're really going to see them that often because they are pretty minute characters, but it's now exposed to them how much of a house of cards the Black Whale is.
Yeah, for real. It's also mentioned that the Healy family is not registered as like a special group like the mafias are. They're registered as civilians, which makes dealing with them, in quotation marks, like taking them out as threats, a bit of a problem, because if it's seen like by the law, like the cops and stuff, and the lawyers and judges and whatever, that civilians are being killed on the ship by the mafias or by the military, it can prove to disturb the balance that they have. Like they basically the cops turn a bit of a blind eye to the mafias killing each other. That's they see it as them resolving their own business, but when civilians start getting involved in those conflicts, then the cops start to step in more.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's setting up like this kind of very fragile balance, like that Togashi throughout the last couple of chapters actually has put a lot of effort into showing the group's dynamics with one another, and then now he's really showing, okay, things are really fragile. Like, watch out for like Haley characters getting killed out in the open and stuff like that, because that's going to be what will start tipping the balance into chaos on the lower deck.
Right. Well, we explored this in previous podcast episodes, but in increasing in tier, the lower the tier, the more corrupt the military officers on that tier would be. And so officers on tier 5 are much more likely to be persuaded or bribed by the mafia than, let's say, on tier 1. This new group of people, and the new character's name who was represented, her name is Borksen, my apologies, she actually hinted at the danger that the Hunter Association brings to the Black Whale and its politics, which we haven't actually really heard that much about in the past few dozen chapters. Ever since the start of the voyage, with Beyond being locked up in tier 1, and under the Zodiacs being in their respective sections, except for a few cuts to Mizai Stom and Bodabai on tier 3, we haven't really seen much of the Zodiacs or the Hunter Association overall, outside of, let's say, other hunters working as mafia guards, or not mafia guards, prince guards in tier 1. We haven't really seen them have that much of a presence outside of the military in the lower tiers, and so it's a callback and is maybe even foreshadowing the danger that the Hunter Association provides. Kakin is definitely aware of the power the Hunter Association has, along with the rest of V5, but more specifically the Hunter Association. It seems with this new group of characters as well, it seems that their new motive is just to stay alive. Honestly, it's like they are just, and to also look out for Cyrenik, but they've realized now, like, the only people that they can trust on the ship are themselves, and if they really want to, each other. And these new friends that we met, even though they're connected with Cyrenik, they don't know if Cyrenik will turn on them or not if they get in his way.
Yeah, I think it's kind of setting up this. We've totally forgot to even talk about this. The reason why these friends are being introduced in the first place narratively speaking, the reason why I was kind of perplexed by it was like, okay, why would you want to humanize Serednik at all? Because usually this is the setup to a redemption, like a character redemption. You show the human side of them, and then you start developing them back in that direction throughout their arc. Whereas I think what these characters are meant to be are like, Serednik, come back to being like a normal, like likable guy, bro. We're like your friends. We're here for you. And then him cutting that part of himself completely off, and then like him finalizing his transformation into a monster. I think that's his arc, because there's just no way that they're humanizing him, right?
Yeah.
There's no way they like. Well, Bjergsen, the League of Legends player. It's Bjergsen, right? She knows that he's a monster, right? Like they found like a mole that was spying on Serednik. I think I've said his name 3 different ways this podcast, by the way. They found some mole, and like it was assumed that was like the random like carcass of like body parts in his room that they were cleaning up that one time. She would have seen those body parts, right? Like she was up there when that happened, so she knows that he's like freaking insane. So I don't get why. Anyway, they like Serednik, and I think he's gonna like kill them or do something messed up with them to really show the audience that he's just like this psycho killer, right?
I mean, in reference to that, though, of course, everybody was talking about it when it released, but the panel of Serednik shooting his competitor in the knee with the text saying,
"Yeah,
Seri, is this what you really want?" Which, honestly, it is a very good panel, I will say. It's with a few words, it speaks a lot. Like with so many other different examples from this arc. And so, going back to what you were saying, perhaps that's a foreshadowing of him going into the darkness, one may say.
It would make sense for his character as well.
Right.
I just want to add, his Nen Beast, the ability of the Nen Beast is to cross him. If you cross him 3 times, you'll cease to become human. I think there's some significance in the way that's phrased. And I think it's pointing at Serednik, saying he's kind of ceased to become human or something like that.
Well, I mean, looking at the just pure eldritch horror that is Serednik's Nen Beast or Guardian Spirit Beast that you're referencing. I mean, it's the heads of 1 or 2 women that he has murdered, morphed into this like abomination. And we've known from the start that these spirit beasts are derived from the prince's personality, and so this is just reinforcing that aspect.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, there's also the 666 on his second Nen Beast's stomach. There's a panel that focuses specifically on the 666 on the it's like a belt looking thing or something, like the face of the belt. I think obviously there's significance in that. We've been getting a lot more exploration of like religious symbolism in Hunter x Hunter, and like there's Krollo and the troops as kind of like the reverse disciples to Jesus. His in the recent chapters that we're going to be talking about next, he's involved with the church, and we're going to be getting a lot more exploration into religious themes and stuff like that. I think obviously it's I'm just kind of stating the obvious here. Serednik is like the embodiment of like the devil, like pure evil. And I think that's what the Nen Beast is showing. I think that's inferring the meaning behind the introduction of like these friend characters and like their fate when they eventually like come to like begged Serenich to come back to being like a human. I think it's just bound to be that he like leans into that monster side and like he's the embodiment of evil. I think that's what he's supposed to represent. I just want to throw in that. Oh, is this too early to talk about this? We'll come back to like this point later in the discussion when we're talking more about Crollo and like the church and stuff. But it relates. My point relates, and we'll come back to it. But yeah, I think they're going to die, and Serenich is pure evil.
I will also like to just point out the meta joke, or I view it as a meta joke at least, in which it's the relationship that the sergeant has with the new group of friends, in which all of the friends refer to Serenich as Seri or Terry, depending on which translation you get it from. And basically he's like, never abbreviate Prince Serenich's name again. I'll gouge your eyes out. All right. And I think it just calls back to all of the fans calling him like Terry, Scary Terry, Terror Sandwich, like all of those. I just think I view it at least as like a funny little joke from Togashi, reference like pointing out that there are the people that are like, you gotta say his name correctly, you gotta say all of it.
That's pretty funny. Yeah.
Was that his intention?
Togashi
Probably
isn't aware of
not.
all the weird names.
I mean, when he literally names a character Souffle, I don't think there's much competition.
I just want to point out, Togashi did a really good job of making these characters introduce this chapter. In half a chapter, he's able to make them interesting characters who I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to see what their like fate is and what their role in the story is. They feel so, again, like I pointed it out with Tsudonkei last podcast, or like the podcast before that. He's just so good at introducing side characters and then like making them enjoyable.
Right.
And these characters, they have a very good dynamic with one another. You have like the sergeant, like who's very typical sergeant character, and then literally like 2 pages later, Togashi kind of turns that on his head, and the sergeant's kind of a bit more chill, and he like compliments them, like he calls them like smart, and like he's talking like a lot more casually, like outside of his sergeant role. Like you can tell like these characters are smart and know when to step into their like soldier role and then back out as like their own unique personalities and stuff like that. Yeah, they're just very, very enjoyable characters. They feel 3-dimensional and very real.
Right. Another example of this, now that you mention it, is the Fujetsu Kasho mini plot line from about 10 chapters back, between the 10th and 11th princes. Like, we only know them for a little. Rest in peace. But we only get to know them for a few chapters, and of course the old guard that helps them out with alongside Melody's performance. But it makes you feel like I want these young innocent girls who just want to be friends to escape this nightmarish fight for succession to a throne. But unfortunately, that does not end up the way that it could have happened. But this is just it's another example, at least.
Yeah. Okay, anything else we want to talk about in regards to this chapter before we move on to the big hitters, the big ones?
Now, like I said, I think this was mostly just an exposition chapter, but going back to what you were saying originally about humanizing a person, who better to talk about than Crollo Lucifer and the Phantom Troop? Ladies and gentlemen, chapters 395 and 396 have been critical to the humanization of the spiders. Huge chapters. Very well written as well, I must say.
Yeah, I did not expect this to happen so soon. But, I should have expected it, since it seems like it's shaping up to be the arc where a lot of these spiders die. As foretold and as has been happening in the previous chapters. When I say as foretold, I'm referencing Neon's predictions way back when in York New City arc, and how they actually turned out to be true for Shalnark I'm not sure if Cortopi got one, but the fortune shall not got played out instead of in York New City. It played out much later in this recent arc.
Right.
And a lot of these other spiders also have similar fortunes, so we'll be seeing how it all plays out with them, and if they'll die or not.
Right.
But yeah,
I mean, starting with go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, starting off with 395, it just starts off with some minor plot movement, which is just Henry figuring out that Marina's goons are teleporting throughout the ship through their special warping rooms, however you want to phrase it. That would explain room 3101 that we talked about in the last episode. The people warped, and guess what happened? They died. They got stabbed in the neck. But besides that, Wayne actually then explains to Henry that the troop is going to room 3102, which is the room beside the trap room. So this would be Nobunaga, Finks, and Phaeton, obviously. They cut a hole through the room, through the bathroom wall next to the toilet, and that leads them into a special secret passage area of the ship. And there's some
Just want to point out, this is a nice callback to when Gon and Killua used like that special technique for getting into those sealed pots, and then they used the technique to escape from Nobunaga. They're calling back to a technique, one of those techniques right now. He's making a new entrance. I forget what the technique is called or whatever, but it warmed my heart to see that. I was like, oh, look at that.
That's a good catch. Hey, maybe Nobunaga learned from Zepile in a different reality. Who knows? One where he wasn't in Meteor City.
Yeah. Nobunaga in the situation, not caring that it's a trap at all. His I don't know if I want to call it arrogance or confidence in his ability. He's just like, yeah, bring it on. I'm ready for anything. He's crazy, bro.
Well, the three spiders move on forward, and there's some dialogue between the three. Finks mentioning how Luini, the man who was able to warp with the crescent scar on his face, or the crescent tattoo, he was, of course, a rookie net user. And so there's some discussion between Nobunaga and Finks saying, Finks is like, we don't want to destroy the world and ruin everybody else while these goobers want to. But then Nobunaga says, that's not exactly true. In the beginning, that's what our purpose in this world was for death, destruction, and carnage. And then it transports us into the backstory.
Yes, yeah. Wow. I reading through this, I was like, opening up on like this trash pile, this huge. That's basically what Meteor City is now. It's a giant trash heap. And it looks like that it's like there's a ledge with a bunch of houses, and it kind of just falls into like a pit of just like trash as far as the eye can see. And then it looks like it leads out into a forest just before it hits a mountain range, which is really, really interesting because a couple chapters from now, we've seen like Tagashi hint on his Twitter like at what's to come, and we will be getting there's like this meme tree drawing in the community. Like he posted this one time, this tree, and it looks like we're going to be venturing out of Meteor City and into that forest, and we'll get to why that will be later. If you've read the chapter, you basically know with Sarasa and everything, but
we'll get there though.
Yeah. He lays out the structure of Meteor City pretty nicely here, and it looks like there might even be like a big road or maybe even a lake, a river that runs through Meteor City. yeah, if you look closely, there's like a lot of little details that you can pick up on.
Well, this just shows
But
that.
yeah, it.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say that this new wide shot really shows how Meteor City is not just politically divided and cut off from the rest of the world, but geographically they really are just sectioned off from the rest of the world. I mean, mountains and rivers make great natural borders.
True. But yeah, just moving forward with like the chapter summary, we get the troop as kids. They're all just so freaking cute and like weird and unique in different ways. You know, Franklin doesn't have like his weird scars all over his face and stitches or anything like that. Uvo's got like, yeah, he none of them know Nen yet. Well, debatable. Crollo might not know Nen, but have awakened it in some way. Either that it's like awakened in some way right now, or he awakens it in the next chapter. But anyway, yeah, Uvo's got like crazy haircut. Same with Finks and Phaeton. They're both looking absolutely just wild trash kids. It's just so fantastic and endearing. And yeah, they're all fighting over just this innocuous videotape. They don't even know what's on it. They're just taking what they can get.
Right. It also establishes the relationships that the troop had before they became the troop. So there were different cliques amongst the troop members. So of course, we've got Franklin fighting with Uvogin. We've got Finks with Phaeton on his little motorbike. And of course, Uvogin is also with Machi, surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, if you're just a complete gamer. But everybody has their own little little cliques.
Yeah, little factions. Which a lot of these chapters, I think, are going to they'll have like significance and like small details that I think you should try and look for as much as you can. So these small factions, they might have a narrative role to play later in the series. It's hard to see or predict any of that now, but I would just encourage readers to kind of look out for things like this as they read these chapters.
Well, I was just going to say that these cliques are still found to this day. I mean, Finks and Phaeton still roll around together all the time.
Yep.
And later on, back when she was still alive, Pakunoda was still hanging around Crollo during Yorkshin. More specifically when they captured Golden Killua for the second time. But
yep.
These previous emotional bonds are still held to Chapter 395 at this point, to modern day. And so this could have been easily 10, 15, 20 years. Like, I don't even know how far in the past this could be. Like, what would you say, like 15, 20 years ago?
I would guess around 20, yeah.
Right, because Crollo's in his late 20s now, and Crollo definitely looks like a 78-year-old kid, maybe. Maybe a bit older.
Yes, yeah, 15 to 20 seems very accurate. It could be 15. Anyway, okay. What significant points in this chapter can we move on to? We introduce the Phantom Troopers kids. We get a lot of their interactions and their dynamics with one another.
I've got another one for you. The introduction of the role the Meteor City Church has on Crollo, more specifically, for example, allowing him to use found VHS tapes. And, of course, it goes on to more information about Meteor City as a whole. For example, they worked with old mafia families to provide human trafficking. And that many of those victims were children under 15 years old, as close as even 70%.
I'm not going to lie, I zoned out for 1 second there. Did you say that... Sorry, ADD Andy. Did you say that the church was involved with the trafficking, or that this is just something that's happened in Meteor City?
Now we're gonna save the theories for later, but I was just giving preference to, or I was just saying that Meteor City had a human trafficking problem with the mafia for
Gotcha.
who knows how long. And I'm saying that in conjunction with another significant point of the chapter, alongside Krello going to the church.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We get. Okay. This is very interesting. Okay. So we get an introduction to the church, which has a lot of sun imagery specifically. It's got parts of architecture. We get a cross specifically. I'm going to show the panel for this on screen. Pika, if you can just note the time that I'm saying this down while I get the image. We get what seems to be a building with a cross. I might butcher this. Maybe some Islamic church or like place of gathering. I'm not mosque. That's the word. Yeah, it seems to have a lot of mixed religious symbols. Is the point? So what Togashi could be doing here is he could be exploring like the role of the church and maybe the positives and negatives of that. We definitely get a lot of the positives in the next chapter when it shows the church bringing people together, providing community and food and like
entertainment,
just being like a positive influence on the community. Which as a kid who grew up religious, religion was great for those reasons. You would go to your gatherings every week. You would have a group of people that you were familiar with, and being a bit meta with COVID and stuff like that these days, it's definitely something that I took for granted back then. Like having a community is such a positive thing. So yeah, the positives of religion and possibly the negatives too. We get a very seedy old guy, this old priest guy who's downstairs in this dark room filled with candles. Who sits above in the dark shadows, looking down onto the pit, onto this lower ranking priest that approaches him, which is just we get like a very mixed bag of like representation here. We get positive sides of the church and like these kind of weird, sketchy, negative, possibly negative sides as well.
All right, so
anyway,
I've got two things I want to add on to what you said. I think that the mixture of the Christian and Islamic imagery used for the church in the first reference, I think it's to point out how everyone in Meteor City is abandoned and left behind. All of them lack an identity and a purpose. All of them they're not brought under a flag or a language or an ethnicity, but they're banded together based on their combined sense of loss. And so I think the church, with the mixture of different elements such as the praising the sun, shout out Solaire, and the reference to Islamic imagery, I think it's a reference to how there's all types of people in Meteor City, whether the good of the good or the evil of the evil.
Yeah, so you get this mix of religions, and it also kind of applies to the people, right? It's just a mix of like different people who have kind of lost their way in the world and ended up in Meteor City. Yeah, that's a great point. There's also this very, very interesting addition to the note that the Phantom Troop, or it's probably the Phantom Troop, but debatably the Phantom Troop left when they slayed the Kurta. They left, "We'll accept anything, but don't ever take anything from us." There's an addition to this in this chapter.
Yeah. So it's going back to what Caroline's was saying. That's actually the second part of the Meteor City motto. The first part is, and I will quote, "Only life can compensate for a life." And so the full quote would be, "Only life can compensate for a life. We'll accept anything you leave here, but don't ever take anything away from us."
Yeah, so we are the troop, or the group of people who killed the Kurta, we'll just say, left the second part of the note, but didn't say anything about the first part. And what this would imply is that the Kurta clan, maybe they have some kind of blood on their hands. So only life can compensate for a life. You know, the Kurta clan may have taken a life of somebody important to the troop, to Meteor City. Just it's like it raises a huge question mark. Like what did the Kurta clan do? Originally, we thought that the troop only did it for profit. That, you know, they're a band of thieves. They were stealing from the mafia purely for profit. You know, purely for the treasures. And then we just kind of inferred that the troop did the same for the eyes. But this adds an extra layer of context that completely changes the reason why they would attack the Kurta, which is really, really interesting. And we'll get into like what some like different theories and different angles of viewing this could be. Right. Do you want to just like talk about those now, or do you want to continue with the summary?
Oh, I was just going to make one final reference to the elder with the candles that you referenced, actually, like a quick little reference. So this is obviously before, since from the previous description, the Meteor City elders learned Nen at some point to combat the encroaching mafia and other government influence. And we're introduced to this new elder here that's with the candles, looking very sinister. And since this is a flashback to approximately 15 to 20 years ago, if we cross-reference his shape and such to an old previous flashback from the Heavens Arena fight between Hisoka and Chrollo, more specifically where Chrollo was explaining how Sun and Moon worked. And he was referencing how he acquired it from the Meteor City Elder. What if this Elder here, presented in Chapter 395, is the same Elder that Chrollo stole Sun and Moon for? And if for people that argue, oh yeah, he doesn't have his gas mask. This was a long time ago. Remember, this was a long time ago. So this was before his face and his bodily condition worsened to the point where he would need to cover his face. I mean, they generally, from the one shot that we have, they seem to have like a similar body type. And so I think...
Yeah, he seems really short and kind of stubby like this one elder that was shown.
Right, so call me crazy or call me a schizo, but I believe that this elder that was shown on 395 with the candles is the same elder that created Sun and Moon, which Chrollo would then later steal and would later use on Hisoka and other victims. That's my schizo
Yeah,
theory.
so I don't think he borrowed it from the elder. He stole it, right? So that kind of brings up like...
Did I say borrow? I meant stole.
Yeah, no, I was just pointing out that Chrollo ends up with an interesting relationship to the leaders of Meteor City. So it's like we have like these the characters now and their relationship to Meteor City and whatever, and where they were back here. Like, what the hell happened between now and then? We get the Kurta massacre. We get these kids changing so much. We get them turning against Meteor City in some way. Like, they're not working with them per se. They're taken from Meteor. You could see this as the Phantom Troop taking from Meteor City as well, which is really, really interesting to think about. We've got like this kind of like what? I'm just so like, oh my gosh, what could possibly happen between now and like
the Kurta massacre?
Now, as in, yeah, the Kurta massacre and like the current state of the church and like what how did Chrollo get like the head tattoo and like is that related to the church? Is it related to the Phantom Troop? Like there's so many like different little things that we're yet to like figure out.
I think we need to wait a little bit longer for additional context. I think there's going to be even more context and story provided throughout this arc, regardless if it's continuous to chapter 397 and further. It wouldn't be like really it wouldn't be surprising if there was more context. Like, what if there was more information about the Kurta massacre, or when the troop left Meteor City originally? Let's say
Oh, I'm hungry for
5
it now.
chapters from now. Are you sure you're just not hungry?
I am hungry. Yeah. Okay. Well, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure there was like another one of the Togashi sketches. He posted like I'm pretty sure it was Nobunaga holding a sword, and it looked like an adult hand, and I think that was around chapter 398 ish. So I think the flashback is going to end in 397 or maybe halfway through 398. And we'll get a flashback to Nobunaga, thinks Feidan, maybe like coming across like a one of the Hailey family or something. But yeah, I think the 397 will conclude with them finding. Well, I'll just like move ahead a bit in the summary here. Sarasa has gone off on her own, looking for more tapes for the dub that they were creating as a group. And it's pretty obvious, like, right after, like, she walks out, it's like the human traffickers are, like, driving in their car, like, well, if we find another kid, we're going to mess him up. So obviously something terrible is about to happen. I think that the flashback will end with them finding that horrible thing. And then we'll cut back to, Nobunaga says, before the flashback, Nobunaga says, we were just angry. Anger and resignation were their driving forces, right? Sorry, my dog is going freaking crazy. I think it'd be a poignant spot to end the flashback with the seed to their anger, right? Like Sarasa being like brutally murdered and tortured or something like that. We end on that panel and then we jump back to the present. I think that is probably going to be where it ends, and we're left with like these other small seeds with like the church and like the human traffickers and like what we're not going to get those answers straight away. But there's a few interesting theories that could be possible. Do you want to talk about those now, with like in relation to like the church and the Kurta and stuff like that?
So, I mean, in reference to the church, perhaps the church had something to deal with the rising child trafficking and other human trafficking of the mafia and other governments. Perhaps later on, as we'll adventure, what if one of the spiders or one of the members of the troop, because they're not even the spiders at this point, what if one of the members of the troop was caught during one of these human trafficking rings, and it ends up in their brutal death, or the rest of the members coming along. And this will specify more actually during 396, but if, let's say, someone like Sarasa were to die, that would be critical to the Phantom Troop's psyche and such, because it has been referenced that she is the emotional core of the Phantom Troop. And so, and she helps everybody understand each other and to get along with each other. And so having that having that core element disappear can have vital consequences. Like, now that we actually mention it, what if Sarasa was still alive during Yorkshire, regardless of context, like with everything else, but what if she was there to help mitigate the decision between the different spiders on what to do with Krollo? What would happen then? Because at that point, people split into different factions. It returned to factionalism. What if there's someone to bring common ground together? And it seems that Sarasa's role of emotional core would have to later be transferred to Krollo. I mean, the Phantom Troop became Krollo. Krollo became the troop became Krollo. So, yeah.
Sorry, my dog is like running in my room and being noisy. Yeah. So referencing, just going to the to Sarasa being the emotional core of the troop. I wasn't really paying attention because I had people coming into my room. I'm really sorry. Sarasa being the emotional core, we see in chapter 396. Oh my gosh, my dog again. I'm struggling to focus. I'm really sorry.
Here, do you want me to just to move on with the summary, or do you want to continue with your theory?
No, it's okay. Okay, let me gather my thoughts for a second. So we see Sarasa. We see Finks try to intimidate Crollo in 396. Is like, yeah, after this showing, let's play some soccer. And I think by that he means he's going to kick Crollo in the nuts. He's going to kick some balls. And then Sarasa immediately cuts through that intimidation. She knows that he's like a softie, right? She goes, here, you take this food and help us hand it out. And he's like, what? And is like, whatever. Okay, let me help, whatever. So she and then she says, he's a real softie. She can see through him, and she knows him on like a more emotional level. She's got a high social IQ, if you will. And then she also later on in this chapter, when Uvo is going to confront Crollo after the play, which he was thoroughly impressed by. It had a huge impact on him. She walks up to him, and then I forget the exact quote. I'd have to find it. Basically, she says to Crollo, like, Uvo thinks you're awesome, basically. She says, Crollo, you really are amazing. I have a better opinion of you now. And she points at Uvo and says, I dubbed you. And it's just showing that she has like an amazing understanding of everyone's emotions in the troop. And she's kind of like the way that everybody understands one another, right? And the significance of that is if it's like death flags, like up the frickin' yin yang right now. If she dies, then the troop loses that. They start to lose their sense of emotional understanding and that connection to themselves, which is one of Crollo's like main conflicts later on in the story. He doesn't really understand himself. Like, he's trying to figure that out, and I think that her loss is the catalyst to where he is right now. And if she was still alive, I assume she's dead. Like, I'm 99% sure she's dead. And this is kind of why the troop is the way they is. It's like she's the catalyst. Yeah, I think that is her significance in the story. She's the emotional core, and they lose her, and they lose their emotional core basically. Anyway, talking about the church and Meteor City and the Kurta clan, there's a theory that the previous Meteor City, prior to where the state that it's in now, was a thriving city, and they were so well developed that they were like exploring the outside world, and they were exploring the Dark Continent. And this theory suggests that like maybe they found like a Kurta settlement in the Dark Continent, and they viewed them as like primitive or whatever, and they set to conquer the Kurta, and then maybe the Kurta struck back in the human world and destroyed Meteor City with like I don't know, maybe like a literal meteor nen ability or something, like a collective like Kurta nen bomb, like just destroyed the city like a freaking Fukushima or something. And that's why Meteor City has its name now or something. That's kind of like the theorized history behind like Meteor City and like their connection to the Kurta. It would give the Meteor City elders reason to like hunt the Kurta down if they were to like find them. Like Sheila goes and finds like this Kurta residence. Like, there are rumors of like Kurta somewhere in like the forests. She goes out to find them. They do find them, and then at this point in the history, Crollo is more involved in the church. He's been indoctrinated. He has his head tattoo. He takes the troop out to exact the church's revenge on or like the city's revenge on the Kurta, and they leave that message. It's like the Kurta destroyed. Meteor City like tried to colonize the Kurta. The Kurta struck back. Now Meteor City is striking back, and then now Kurapika is striking back. It's like this cycle of violence type story. That's a lot of the current speculation that I'm seeing, and that could make sense. Who knows if that's right though? Like, it could be completely different, but that's like the story that seems to be setting up right now. What do you think about that?
That is certainly a very interesting theory. That would have to be based on the Kurta actually originating from the Dark Continent, or having residence in the Dark Continent, which at this point, maybe, probably not. I'm not a believer in the Kurtas from the Dark Continent theory, to be honest. I'm not a believer.
I actually am a believer in that. I actually am, because they have a lot of symbolism in their dressing that refers to not Meteor City, Lake Mobius, and like the there's just a lot of symbolism within the Kurta that would point to them originating from the Dark Continent. It's totally possible that it's not the case. It's not a huge detail that would like make or break this theory either. The Kurta could still originate within the human world. They could still be some kind of like conflicts between the previous Meteor City, like before it became Meteor City, or whatever that was called, or whatever.
Right.
There still could be some kind of conflicts that spans back generations or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of the speculation right now.
Yeah, I think the perfect phrase for it, in my opinion at least, is plausible, not probable.
I would say it's like right in the middle. We're starting to get like little, we're starting to build out like a map of things that can connect to one another, and we're slowly just adding more as chapters come out, and we just have to see where it goes. But yeah, do you want to add anything?
To the Church and Kurta conflict theory, this is my first time hearing about it, so I don't have anything else to add. I haven't really thought about it too much.
Okay.
So, I just also kind of love how.
But yeah,
Krollo
please go ahead.
And Krollo and the Phantom Troop go from dubbing the equivalent of the Power Rangers to committing genocide.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's, again, how do they go from this to that? It's just like, the tension is crazy. I can't wait for the next chapter. But yeah, like they're performers, they're actors. Like Krollo, it just makes so much sense that he is an actor. Acting is all about embodying somebody that you're not, and it just like matches up with his ability so much. Like he embodies others' abilities by taking their nen and like acting it out, and he kind of becomes them as a nen user, and he loves to understand people through the minutia of their nen ability. He explains this when he's fighting Hisoka in Heaven's Arena. He's talking about Order Samp, I believe it is, and how the user would like view puppets, and like how Krollo views like people, and like at what point a person would become a puppet, like and all this stuff. And he says he loves delving into like I forget specifically what he says. Maybe just mark it down. 55 minutes. He says something about like he loves understanding people through his ability, and like that's like the true thrill of Skill Hunter or whatever. And it just makes so much sense that he's like this. His talent is being an actor and embodying others. And we see on stage as he's acting out these different characters that he's playing. It seems like his nen awakens. Like Uvo, I'm not sure if Uvo's feeling like his his nen awakening or something, or if they're all just being really impacted by like the believability of his performance. But we see him on stage as his like acting this villain character. It looks like he's got like this rough aura that's beginning to awaken around him, which would make him like a nen genius, or or it's just not aura, like something that's way less fun,
Right.
or it's just like his performance or whatever, like his like malice.
It's just the sound waves, guys. It's just the sound
Truly
bouncing off the high ceilings, creating an echo. Clearly,
listen, it could be either thing. I just think it would be way more interesting, and like it would make sense like thematically with like his character and his skill hunter ability, that he would awaken his nen acting out on stage. It's just a perfect point to awaken his nen.
that fits it all in 396.
Yeah, and I do want to say, I pointed it out earlier, like a lot of what's happening now could be like significant like foreshadowing or like setup for future events or like stuff like that. And I feel like maybe some of this dialogue in the play could point towards like where this flashback could go, or maybe it has significance with like the troupe. We don't really know anything yet, but I just want to point out to like pay really close attention to like the lines of the play. I think it's really fun to scrutinize each little thing that's said in these chapters and see how it lines up with future events. So I will be paying close attention. I just want to point that out.
I think we're all going to be paying very close attention at this point.
Yeah.
So,
one more thing that I wanted to point out about the troupe and abilities is that a lot of their abilities seem to relate to performing in some way, like different performance arcs.
Right. For example, Uvogin later said that he wants to be the best villain that he could. And what is his future nen ability be? Just providing raw destructive force. Just like how a traditional comic book villain would do.
I was going to say, Uvo's seemed... Oh, yeah. He wants to be like the main villain, right? He says that.
Right.
But I was just thinking like, Uvo's is kind of like the least performance art type ability, right? I was going to say the other troops' abilities, they all seem much more like artsy, like Machi's nen stitches, like when she uses those to like puppeteer the mafia members in Yorknu. There's also Shalnark's, which is literally turning someone into a puppet. Finks's one is a bit more combat centric. Phaeton's is really, really interesting, because I feel like it almost embodies Meteor City, like the quote that Meteor City developed, right? Their what do you call it? Their catchphrase. Phaeton's, we'll accept anything you leave here, but don't take anything from us. Only life can compensate for a life. It kind of reflects in Phaeton's ability, like, the damage you do to me, I'm going to deal back to you like tenfold. He kind of embodies that sentiment from Meteor City so strongly, and I only like recently put that together. I was like, oh wow. Wow, that's so one-to-one. But yeah, his less of a performer of ability. Same with I'm blanking on the name. How am I? Franklin.
His is pretty combat.
But yeah.
Yeah.
We get like a mix of like combat centric abilities. But yeah, I was just like thinking, okay, well, Crollo's ability is so related to like his role with like acting, and it seemed to like awaken with his passion for acting. Like maybe it would be the case for like the other troop members as well, and like maybe the only ability that we haven't really seen yet is Nobunaga's ability. Like maybe his ability could be something related to like theater and acting and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, do you want to move on?
My last thing for 395 was just mentioning like the introduction of Sarasa and Sheila, or the reintroduction of Sheila at this point. Because what I'm not entirely surprised, but it came as a great shock to me when I read and found out that Sheila is related to Crollo, because
Yeah.
and she still had the Adventures of D Hunter with her even all the way back then.
Yeah.
And so just
that
for me,
it definitely was surprising to see. Like we knew that Sheila had something to do with the troop
right?
prior to these chapters, but what we didn't know is how closely related she was to Crawler, and like how close they were in like terms of like friendships and like stuff like that.
But then it's learned that Sheila is one of Crawler's closest friends in his early childhood.
Yeah.
Still with the
and it
dead eyes and the ears that stick out from like the headband.
it makes you wonder what happened to Sheila. Is she Pariston? No.
No.
Yeah.
No.
We do have a whole podcast episode discussing this, but it is a crazy crackpot theory. One of my favorite theories. If it's true, it'd just be so crazy to see how that would come together as the story progresses. If not, maybe this is the person that that the Zoldycks were hired to kill. Sarasa dies. I'm like 99% certain Sarasa dies pretty much like next chapter to these freaks that are hunting human traffickers. Not hunting human traffickers. That are human traffickers hunting.
They are the human traffickers.
Hunting kids. I'm pretty sure Sarasa dies to them. Maybe this mysterious member that died to the Zoldycks was Sheila.
Well, that would line up for time, because Sheila, or not in this case, but the Zoldycks killed the spider 3 years prior to the events of Yorkshin, and Sheila's encounter with
is that right?
Yes, and
okay, I didn't know that.
Yes, and the Kurta massacre happened 5 years before the events of Yorkshin, and so the time does match up there. If you want to believe in that theory, that is possible. Like, it fits the timeline, because at that point Sheila was still alive until 3 years at this point, unless there's some later chapter that contradicts exactly what I'm saying. In case there is, I'm sorry, but I mean, at this point, it's a plausible theory. I don't know if I would believe in it, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah. Why would the Zoldycks want not want but be hired to kill one of the troop? It's just so much like, oh my gosh, so much has been set up that we're yet to see play out. It's like, oh, how do all of these things connect to one another? It's like it's so exciting.
I think it's pretty obvious why someone would hire the Zoldycks to murder one of the Phantom Troop, or to assassinate one of them. I mean, they are especially at that point, they're wanted criminals across the globe. They are a grade A bounty on their hunt, according to the Hunter Association. They are some of the most dangerous bounties that there are. And so, of course, you need to hire the best assassin for the best group of thieves, or the most dangerous, I should say. At that point, I don't even know what Sheila's Nen ability would be. Maybe it's a reference. Maybe it's something to do with D Hunter, because D Hunter has been such a critical part of her character. Like, it's even back when she was visiting in the Let's Go Forests. I mean, she was still carrying D Hunter all over the place. So I don't, going off that tangent, I mean, perhaps the Zoldycks did kill her. Perhaps Sheila was the original 8th member of the troop.
Yeah.
Who would later then be replaced by Shizuku.
Yeah. It's really interesting to think about that. The way that we would probably deconfirm that is if Shizuku would be like introduced in the next chapter, like in this, somewhere in this flashback.
Shizuku isn't from Meteor City, though.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Okay, but I did want to point out that Shalnark is not a founding member, right? Yet he's still in this flashback, which is perplexing. Like, it just deepens. Like, like, how does the Phantom Troop form? They seem to form when they're much older. So how do we get from here to the Phantom Troop, and like what the hell happens in between? There's just so much that we're yet to see.
Exactly. I mean, Shalnark, if we're looking at this Grimling, perhaps looking for interesting kids in Meteor City because of Saratha's death. Perhaps Krollo's looking for a person like Shalnark, who would be interested in joining the troop and going on tours all over the world to dub the Power Cleaners. But that's just a theory, though.
So cute.
No, never cute. But I think at that point, we've gone over most of 395, and indirectly, we've already talked a lot about 396. Though I'm pretty sure there's plenty of we could still talk about some stuff.
Yeah, we did cover a lot of 396 when talking about Krollo's performance, which is the majority of the chapter. We see that his performance really brings everyone together. Whether that's, like the kids, Uvo, Machi, Finks, Phaeton, they're all kind of gelled together now after this performance. They're all like, yeah, this is so cool. We want to be a part of it. We really see Krollo as like a young leader. Even though everybody treats him as kind of like the little brother, he's like the little brother and the big brother at the same time, which is an interesting dynamic. Something that I wanted to point out, my schizo theory of this chapter is that I don't actually believe this. I'm just saying this in jest, really. Like, oh, what if this could be the case? What if the priest deliberately sabotaged the tape because he could see that Krollo with this project was able to like bring so many of the Meteor City youth together, and he was like afraid of his potential to unite them. I'm guessing that like the church has some kind of like control over Meteor City and like what the people in Meteor City think and what they do, the politics of Meteor City. I'm assuming that they're going to play a big role in like the politics side of Meteor City, right? And they want to control the youth as much as they can. We see that this priest goes and talks to like this head priest about Krollo's potential and like how, I forget what he says specifically. I'm really sorry, but he basically like
me to quote?
Points out like, hey, yeah, that'd be great.
Krollo is very inquisitive and quite studious. He shows a lot of promise. He surprises me often with his creative ideas. It might be interesting to bring him to the elders meeting to hear his opinions.
So, yeah, we get like this big dark room with this one elder guy in it, right? And then this guy like, yes, Krollo, very interesting. We should bring him into our organization, right? There's kind of like a weird vibe going on, right? So I'm just extending that vibe check onto like this moment where this tape gets messed up and like the performance kind of ends. And so maybe he's seeing like, okay, well, this thing is like bringing so many of these kids together. Like maybe I should stop that from happening so they don't unite under Krollo. Like he sees Krollo's potential. He sees that he's kind of like a leader bringing together like these kids to do this dub. He wants to stop him from becoming like a leader. So he stops the tape, and then that Krollo doubles down on the performance and just goes out and does it himself with the mic. And it kind of backfires on the evil priest in this schizo scenario. And Krollo kind of puts himself in this position of kind of like this Meteor City superstar amongst the younger generation of these Meteor City kids, right? I wonder, like that. I would be very interested to see if that has any like place in like in the next chapters coming up. Like if that, we'll see basically. I myself don't really even believe it like fully. It's very much like a reach and like just like a, well, maybe the vibes can indicate something like this, maybe not. Who knows? Anyway, I've been freaking rambling.
There's nothing wrong with a good crackpot theory. I mean, it makes sense. It's not completely delusional. I mean, there are
Some
motives and reasons, but I agree.
Some of my favorite theories are the crackpot theories.
No, of course.
Regular theories, come on, man. Reach a little. Be a little insane. Make some crazy predictions, you know?
But yes, I also would like to say that one of the power cleaners in panel in page 8, it kind of looks like Gon. Like Gon's face and hairstyle.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's trying to reference him. Probably not. It would be pretty funny though. I just think it's pretty funny how Gon it has one of the power cleaners has Gon's face when it's clearly before he was born. This was closer to when Jing was still a kid than anything.
Yeah. You know what? This could be. I'm more schizo connections right now. This is not as schizo though. So this main character is a lot like Gon. I think that's what Togashi is communicating here, and maybe Chrollo really liked this main character. We also see like pretty much the whole troop likes they're obviously like impacted by like the cleaning power cleaners. That's what they're called. Is that what they're called? What are they called? Anyway, they're impacted by the power cleaners. They obviously like create this troop in the image of like the power cleaners in some way, you know, like, oh, like a group of guys that do stuff. Maybe when they captured Gon all the way back in Yorknu, like they were like lenient or like merciful because they kind of saw Gon in like this, he kind of resembled like this main character in the power cleaners, and they were like, this kind of reminds me of like that show I really liked as a kid. Like this kid is so out there. Like maybe like in their subconscious they thought about the power cleaners when they looked at Gon, and they were like, oh.
But imagine if the concept of the power cleaners was in Togashi's mind back in 2000 and 2001 when Yorkshire was being written.
I wouldn't be surprised because Togashi has been planning this backstory for a long time now. There was an interview back when he first. I'm pretty sure there was an interview. I could just be like, I'm pretty sure I read something online about this. There was an interview back when the Volume 0 released for when the movie released and Volume 0 released alongside it. He said in this interview like he wanted to include like a troop backstory as well, but like things just didn't really work out or for some reason or another. So we only got Kurapika's side, and then now we're finally getting what he was planning all those years ago. So he has been planning for this for a long time. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if he knew about these details back when Chapter 1 released, and he like knew Kurapika's backstory.
Well,
you know?
he definitely does have that. Definitely does check out because I mean that Sheila was introduced back in Volume 0. I mean, she was one of the critical characters and primary motivations. I mean, so it really does show that Togashi is really writing in 6 dimensions over here, like 5D chess over here. All right,
and
that's another thing. Like the man is playing in 5D chess. It's impossible to predict what is going to be coming next. Like unless it's very, very generic. It's like I've just been proven wrong and wrong again about different details that's going to happen in the next chapter. I'm always surprised, and honestly, I'm glad it's not entirely predictable. If it was entirely predictable, there would be no joy in coming up with random theories about what's going to come out in the next week or so. Because we haven't been able to really do this on a continuous consecutive basis for years now. And so... Yeah.
Just a note on shonen series, I think that's how they die. When you can like perfectly predict everything that's going to happen, like chapter to chapter, when it's not interesting and like taking you by surprise as much as like Hunter x Hunter can. Like... A lot of the reading or watching experience is watching things all at once. Reading it week by week, it's like amazing to actually see how unpredictable and how well Togashi is at like structuring like page turners, chapter turners. You know, you can never quite guess what's going to happen next, which is really, really impressive. Like the Hunter x Hunter Discord that I'm in hosts a prediction contest every week to see like who can predict what's going to happen in the next chapter, and like we haven't got it like right like once. It's just every single week it's just something like completely like, oh my gosh, how nobody thought of like this happening. It's just like a testament to how good Togashi is at like being unpredictable and being interesting week to week.
Exactly. No one was going to predict the palette cleaners.
Actually, I did predict. Anyway, so we've got a few more points we can talk about. We're definitely over time, but I think that's fine.
No, we're covering
one of them is Uvo's goal being to play the best villain in the world, and then how that relates to Chrollo currently in the Phantom Troop. So, Uvo says, at first, well, I just wanted to be able to have something, anything. But being able to clearly define what that is and what I want to do is an amazing feeling. And Chrollo asks him, what is it you want to do? And then Uvo says, tour around the world with you in a play and be the best villain in the world. Which is really interesting to see with how the troop kind of acts as a group. They're just like so comically like villain. Well, not comically, but like they're always like going for like, okay, let's steal everything from like the mafias, and then let's like steal from like the Kaken Kingdom Empire, like all their treasures. You know, like they're doing like these crazy like villainous things, almost like they it's almost like it's performance art, which I wrote down in my notes. The troops' actions as performance art, as like art as a message to the world, you know. Previously, I kind of viewed the troop as just like, oh well, yeah, they're just like, I don't know, they're thieves, and this is like their identity, you know, and they just like happen to construct their identity around like stealing because, you know, they're good thieves, not like good as in like morally, but like they're effective thieves, and then maybe they just decided as a group that their gimmick could be like stealing from like crazier and crazier scales, right? Whereas this kind of recontextualizes it as like, okay, well, the troops started off as like in this pure stage, like they're the fan dub troop. You know, they're just like, they want to tour around and be like, hold like plays and like act and stuff like that. And then obviously some terrible thing is going to change that. And they, you know, it's like now after like this terrible thing has affected them, they want to like create art in the world that reflects what happened to them, and like they're trying to create a message like and like deliver that to the world by doing like these large scale crazy things, right? We yet to see how that relates to the troop, to the Kurta clan, sorry. But I think that small recontextualization behind like the troop as just thieves to now the troop is like this crazy like performance art like group of like artists basically is kind of like an interesting view on the troop that I had never considered before. What do you think about that?
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think you're hitting it the nail on the coffin right there. Honestly,
nail on the head. PogChamp.
Yes. But I've actually been thinking, now that you mention it, that the Phantom Troop is seemingly just another example about how the corruption and darkness of the Hunter x Hunter world can ruin the pureness and the innocence of a child or of a person. We can have countless examples of how world circumstances and external forces greatly change the philosophy of a given individual or group. Gon, Killua, the Phantom Troop, Meruem, the Royal Guard, basically every notable character has been greatly influenced by the world in one way or another. And so, going back to what you were saying, especially if Sarasa is the one that's going to be brutally murdered and trafficked, I think that perfectly fits into the narrative of not just the Succession War, but of the Hunter x Hunter world as a whole.
Yeah. Something else that I just wanted to relate back into that idea of the troupe being performance artists. Uvergen says that he wants to play the best villain, or like be the. I want to tour around the world with you in a play, and be the best villain in the world. I feel like Chrollo has kind of taken that on as the leader, and he dons like this Antichrist imagery, right?
Right.
Which is like the idea of like the biggest bad in the world is the Antichrist. It's Satan, right? Which is, what I was mentioning earlier with Serennik and his 666 thing. This is what I'm talking about. Like, it's very obvious that Togashi is communicating that the symbolism of the devil is like the biggest bad in the world. Chrollo is trying to embody that as his performance art. He's performing as the greatest villain. Serennik is like literally just being shown to be the greatest evil in this world. Chrollo is acting it, and he's kind of become it in a lot of ways. With the Curtis slaughter, like just not thinking twice about like murdering people that he's not like related to in any way. He just doesn't care. He's become like the greatest evil. Serennik is basically the greatest evil. Like the Nen Beast is like a reflection of the person, and it's reflecting that Serennik is like the greatest evil. And then there's also how the Chrollo Lucifer being the devil relates to the church as well, and his relationship to the church. How does the church has taken like an interest in like recruiting Chrollo. What does the church do to turn Chrollo into like Lucifer? Like you have Lucifer is like the one that falls from heaven, right?
Yes.
Like
Lucifer is Satan. Wait.
Yes. Yeah. I knew that. I'm just.
You would know
yeah.
better than I'm afraid.
Yeah. I wasn't saying it as like right. Like, is that right? Am I wrong? I was just. Yeah. It was just like a speech pattern, like habit thing. But anyway, like his relation to the church, like what is the Lucifer in his name? Yeah, it's just like all this symbolism, all like this foreshadowing for what's going to happen. Just how does it happen? I'm just I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to see how it all like unfolds.
Yeah, where does he break?
Yes, indeed. Where does it go wrong for Chrollo?
Right. Man.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think we've covered most of it for now. Perhaps there'll be more context as more chapters come out, but from Chapter 396 releasing just officially today, I think we've covered everything. And of course, I will also just mention at the very end that the chapter does end showing Sarasa being left alone, wandering the great forests, looking for power cleaner episodes on VHS, with some strange men driving through in a black van with hostages. And it's implying that Sarasa... It's implying that Sarasa is going to be trafficked.
Yes, it looks like the car is like literally following where she went. Like you see her running through like this kind of hallway of trash piles, and then you see the car driving through a very similar looking hallway of trash. So it could be like literally as like we get to the next chapter, it's the car driving up to Sarasa. That could be the the sequence of events here.
Well, the last quote of this chapter actually comes from the driver of this van that says, and I quote, "They're getting more vigilant here. Yeah. We've made the quota for delivery. The era of hunting here may be coming to a close. If we find one last
which is
one,
interesting.
we'll make sure to have some fun." Evil laughter.
Monka-esque.
That it really is a Monka-esque moment, if I want to speak Twitch chat. It really... So that's why we've been saying this entire episode that we think that Sarasa is going to be trafficked or killed. Especially... this is all but confirming it at this point. All of the indications are there.
Yeah. 99% sure. It could... I don't know. There could be like some kind of twist where... Nah. She's dead. She's dead.
She's just dead?
Anyway,
She's just dead?
yeah. She's totally dead, bro. Ain't no way. All right. We're wrapping up the podcast here. We're half an hour over time. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.
Thank you.
We really, really appreciate it. Please comment your thoughts on the Phantom Troop, Crollo as an actor. I'm really sorry. Saffron! Oi! You're messing up my outro. What are you doing? Goodness. Sorry about that. My freaking dog mode.
As you were saying.
Comment your thoughts on the Phantom Troop and like the entire dynamic that's going on here. Comment your predictions on like the role that the church plays, where the Kurta clan fits into this mess. What the hell is going to happen next? Comment at all. We want to hear your theories.
Read all the comments.
Is Sheila Pariston
real? No, not real.
Did the priest sabotage the tape, and is he trying to control like the youth of Meteor City?
Only Togashi knows.
Schizo theories, please post it all. Yeah, like and subscribe if you want more of this kind of stuff. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next one, whether that's next week or like. We do something similar to this week where we kind of bunched a couple chapters into one podcast. Maybe it'll be a couple weeks from now if that's the case. But yeah, we'll see you then.